But actually, I'm here to talk about everybody's favorite topic because it's not microgenerations, it's not AI. Everybody's favorite topic is themselves, right? End of the day, I can engage anybody in talking about themselves. So that's my job today at this final piece of our programming, this last keynote, is to bring this back to you and to stretch your idea of who and what you are as an innovator. So that's what I'm going to do. That's my mission today. It might surprise you a little bit. It might shock you. It might rustle your feathers. That's okay. That's the whole point. But in order to do that, I need you to come on a little bit of a journey with me. So walk with me back to the 1970s in New York City's the Bronx, okay? Now back then, if you know your history, you know that that wasn't an easy time for the black and brown communities of the Bronx, right? Segregation of past decades was taking new form with much of the white population moving to the suburbs. We saw the impacts of redlining being compounded, where people in these communities couldn't get financing for mortgages or to start businesses, causing further property devaluation. Then when you bring in slum clearing for the highway project of the day, what you end up with is a situation where the Bronx was quite literally its own little island of poverty and despair. It was a tough time, right? If you know what was happening then, New York City was going bankrupt. And so while on one hand, the city was shutting down firehouses, on the other hand, landowners were paying arsonists to burn down their buildings, figuring they get more for the insurance money than they could as a rental enterprise. So it's estimated that up to 80% of buildings in the Bronx burned during that time, displacing over 250,000 people. So it was a tough time. There was a lot of chaos. There was, a lot of constriction of resources. And it was out of that time, out of that chaos, out of that struggle that something special was born. An innovative fire was sparked that would go on to change the world in a big way. Created out of the pieces of jazz, rock, funk, and R&B, a fusion genre was born. Does anybody know what I'm talking about yet? A collision of storytelling, technical reinvention, a genre, a lifestyle, a sensibility that would go on to become one of the biggest forces in modern pop culture. Of course, I'm talking about hip-hop, everybody. That's what I'm here to talk about. That's the parallel I'm going to draw today. See, it was born in the 70s in the Bronx, but it took root and sort of built itself into something it could recognize itself as in the 80s. It became commercial and mainstream in the 90s, and by the 2000s, it was pretty much ubiquitous. You couldn't go anywhere without seeing the impact of hip-hop. Now you fast forward to 2023, and I don't know if you know this, but hip-hop is now, as of this past August, 50 years old. 50 years old. Give it up for hip-hop. That's all right. Give it up for hip-hop, everybody. That's it. All right, so somewhere in there, in that 50 years, I came along. I was born in 1986, and I didn't know what hip-hop was. I just knew that I loved my Mr. T coloring book, which is kind of hip-hop, a little way, But I didn't know what hip-hop was. All I knew was that I didn't like the music that my parents listened to, right? And so it wasn't until I moved back to Toronto and I started at a new school, and this kid came up to me named Billy, introduced himself, and he kind of gave me the lay of the land of the schoolyard and the groups and stuff, and he said, listen, you can hang out with us, so like those guys over there, they usually listen to like rock music, they're like the rockers, but we listen to hip-hop. Why don't you come play with us? And so over the next couple months, I sort of got introduced to hip-hop, and that was sort of the ultimatum that, shaped a big part of my path from there on. I became a big fan. I became obsessed with it. I started to get involved in the culture, read about it, go back and listen to other songs that I hadn't discovered yet. And by university, I went straight to the online radio station there at University of Toronto, and I got myself a radio show. And so every Tuesday night for about 4 or 5 years, from 9 p.m. to midnight, you could catch me on the online radio show. Before we even knew what a podcast app was on our phone, I was there interviewing different cultural leaders, different rappers, producers, MCs, and so on, to really try to support a local community. Through all of that, I realized, when I think back to that time, what drew me and what still draws me to this culture is the newness, is the sort of the focus on next. And they might say that, hip-hop didn't invent anything, but it sure did reinvent a lot of different things. And so what I want to point out to you right now, and we're going to kind of bring it home, is that hip-hop, at its essence, is a product of innovation. We wouldn't have hip-hop the way we have it today if it wasn't for the early innovators that sort of broke the mold and tried new things. And so as we go forward today, that's hip-hop story, and that's sort of my story with hip-hop. But I thought, again, this is about you guys. So what about your story with hip-hop? And I don't care if you don't consider yourself a hip-hop fan. That's okay. That's maybe even better. Because they say surprising information has been shown to impact what we remember and to facilitate the transfer of learning strategies. Inducing an uncertain mood like surprise has often been found to lead to more systematic processing, which might aid in learning. That comes from Tydens and Linton. They're two of my favorite scholars ever since they wrote something that supported my keynote. And so my surprise for all of you is that you're a rap star in the making. If you read the title of this keynote, you knew that was coming. You are a rap star in the making. I don't care if you've never touched a turntable, if you don't listen to hip hop, if you don't know what I'm talking about. You're a rap star in the making because you're an innovator. And so walk with me along this journey because there's a lot more in common between hip hop and innovation than you might realize.